Ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the January 25th, 2022 meeting of the Laughlin Town Advisory Board here at the Laughlin Regional Government Center, 101 Civic Way in Laughlin, Nevada. Some housekeeping issues. Items on the agenda may be taken out of order. The board may combine two or more agenda items for consideration. The board may remove an item from the agenda or delay discussion relating to any item at any time. No action may be taken on any matter not listed on the posted agenda. All planning and zoning matters heard at this meeting are forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners Zoning Commission, known as the BCC, or the Clark County Planning Commission, PC, for final action. Please take a moment, myself included, to turn off or mute any cell phone devices you may have with you today. Okay. Please take any private conversations outside the room into the hallway. Within 48-hour advance request, a sign language interpreter or other reasonable efforts to assist and accommodate persons with physical disabilities may be available by calling 702-455-3530, TDD at 702-385-7486, or Relay Nevada toll-free at 800-326-6868. Supporting materials provided to the board for this meeting may be requested from our secretary, Tammy Harris, at 702-298-0828. And at the back of the room, there are supporting documents and a sign-in sheet. If any of you need that or would like to please sign in, let us know that you're here with us today, as this is a public meeting. Supporting materials is or will be available at the Clark County Department of Administrative Services, 500 South Grand Central Parkway, 6th floor, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89155. Supporting material is or will be available also on the Clark County website, which is clarkcountynv.gov/Laughlin TAB. Your board before you today are Pamela Walker, Herman Walker, no relation, Fred Doughton, Kathleen Haas, your vice chair, and myself, Kathy Oakes, your chair. Our secretary, to my left, your right, is Tammy Harris, and she can be reached at area code 702-298-0828, and correspondence via email to her email address, which is Tammy, TAMMY, Harris, at clarkcountynv.gov. Our county liaison is with us here today, and that is Mark Moskowitz. He can be reached at two numbers, of course, this office at 702-298-0828 or at 702-455-6173. In addition, email correspondence can be sent to him at mark.moskowitz, MOSKOWITZ, at clarkcountynv.gov. At this time, I'd like to call this meeting to order, and if I can please have you stand for our invocation, led by Pastor Doug Wesley, and our Pledge of Allegiance, led by Kathleen Haas. Thank you.
Father, we ask you today to be with us. We invite you to be here. This subject matter is just a little bit complicated, and we ask that you offer to our board members, besides the obvious wisdom and that they have, offer to them an extra amount of wisdom from you, extra amount of knowledge from you, to give them the ability to really make the right decisions and to wade through all this complicated material. We're fortunate to have them. They're excellent people. We're fortunate to have our staff. We're fortunate to have Mark. We're fortunate to have Michael Naft. These are all excellent people. They're all committed people. And also for the presenters today, that they're given the clarity and everything they need to really communicate what it is they want to do, that it's all clearly communicated. So it all makes sense to everybody. We've been talking about these types of projects for a long time, and I just pray that this is one of those ones that happens if it's meant to be. And we thank you and we bless you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Please salute our flag and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. I'll go ahead and commence with a roll call. Pamela Walker.
Present.
Present. Herm Walker.
Here.
Present. Fred Doughton.
Here.
Present. Kathleen Haas.
Here.
Present. Kathy Oakes present. We do have 5 members and we do have a quorum, so we can commence business. Public comment is the next section that I will open up, and this is a period devoted to comments by the general public about items that do appear on today's agenda. No discussion, action, or vote may be taken during this public comment session. You'll be afforded the opportunity to speak on individual public hearing items at the time they are presented. If you wish to speak to the board about items within its jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda, you must wait until the comments by the general public period listed at the end of today's agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Please step up to our speaker's podium and go ahead and state your name and address for the record. If you would also please spell your last name, as these meetings are recorded and televised, but it's easier for our secretary if she has your correct spelling of your name. If any member of the board wishes to extend the time, that will be done by a vote of the board, by a majority vote, or by the chairperson. So with that, I will go ahead and open the public comment session for anyone that wishes to speak to the items that are before us today on today's agenda, but also realize you'll be afforded a time to speak again as the item is presented. So if anyone would like to take the podium and speak, please go ahead now. Okay, seeing no public comment at this... I'm sorry. Please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Yoko Allen, and I live at 1565 Sparkling Sands Drive. And the one question that I have is, I'm all for solar because I have solar myself, but how is it going to affect us in this community? I mean, after it's built, is it going to be beneficial to, is it going to be sent to California, or is it going to be used, locally? So that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, and that's also something I'm sure will be divulged, and questions that can be asked of the applicants as they present today. So we'll try and ask that question or recall to ask it. Okay. So, any more public comment? No? Okay. I'll move forward then to approval of today's agenda for the January 25th, 2022 to hold, combine, or delete any items. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Informational items. Receive a report and updates from South County Liaison, Mark Moskowitz.
Thank
Hello.
you, Chair. We're going to put something up on the screen real quick. I want to let everyone know we are in the winter months, but I want to let you know Commissioner Knapp in this office is still working hard with Nevada Department of Wildlife on the safety of the river. I know right now there's not as much traffic on the river, but we'll be in the summer months pretty soon. So I want to give a quick update and let you know that the Commissioner, as well as myself, have been working diligently with the proper agencies to make sure that this issue is still at the forefront and that people are aware of it. So we've been working with Nevada Department of Wildlife to provide classes and stuff like that. So it's a continued partnership. I know we've discussed it in the summer months, but I'd love to make sure everyone remembers it during the winter months as well. So just wanted to give a quick update. And this up here is a picture of the Commissioner going out there with the Nevada Department of Wildlife, and it was a good experience. And I've done that as well to really get a lay of the land and know what's going on. Because you can read about it and hear about it, but actually being on the water and seeing everything and seeing what they have to do is eye-opening, because their agency, just like all other agencies, is very short-staffed. So they only have maybe one or two, and we're all familiar with the crowdedness of the water during the summer months. So you can imagine how difficult their job is, and also dealing with people that could be impaired as well can make their job very difficult. So please keep that in mind as well when you are realizing the agencies that cover the river. So I just want to give a quick update.
That's great to see him out on the water.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving forward to item number 5, which is planning and zoning, which I assume is why most of us are here today. Planning and zoning, this is UC 210753, County of Clark Administrative. This is for a use permit for the following. 1, electric generating station, known as a solar photovoltaic facility. 2, electrical substation. 3, overhead power transmission line. 4, increase the height of utility structures. 5, public utility structures with all necessary structures. 6, waive landscaping and screening requirements. 7, eliminate trash enclosure. And 8, allow signage in conjunction with the electric generating station and electrical substation. So that is the use permit. In addition, it's asking for a waiver of development standards for the following. 1, off-site improvements, which are also known as curb, gutter, sidewalk, streets, and paving. And 2, dedication of right-of-way. Also, the applicant is seeking design reviews for the following: electric generating station, solar photovoltaic facility, electrical substation, overhead power transmission line, maintenance and operation building, public utility structures with all accessory ancillary structures and uses, preliminary grading for a hillside development, which is known as slopes greater than 12%, and finished grade on 10,846 acres in an RU, otherwise known as Rural Open Land Zone, and an MD, designated manufacturing zone, and an M2 industrial zone, and a PF, public facility zone, generally located on the west side of Casino Drive and Needles Highway, 1.3 miles west of Casino Drive within Laughlin. This is for possible action to the BCC on 2/16 of 2022. And the board will be considering all of these special conditions as they're set forth from the applicant. We have staff recommendations. However, the board will reserve the right to make some changes with the applicant as they're here. So if I do have the applicants available to present to the board and to the public on this item, and I do believe we have in conjunction some video jump drive information. Okay. Are the packets that the board's been presented, are those at the back of the room?
Yes.
Do we know?
We're sending them out now.
Okay, all right. If any of you wanted to take a look at the presentation, it's going to be up on the screen, but I believe they brought some extra copies and can put those at the back of the room if you'd like to take with you today. Okay. I think so. If they're okay. All right, if you please state your name and I'm sorry. Staff, do you have a comment? Okay, if you please state your name, and that way we know who to address our questions to.
Sure.
And yes, please. Yeah, you're socially distanced, yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jason Moretz, Moretz. I'm with 8 Minutes Solar Energy. I am the lead developer for this project. With me here today is Dennis Harper. He's Vice President of Land Acquisition. And also with us is David Lundgren. He is the permitting lead for this project. So today we want to do two things. It's been 2 years since we've been here. It's been 2 years since we've been here, so we wanted to give you a general update about the project, but then obviously more specifically talk about the permitting, and David's going to dive into details there. As I mentioned, it's been about 2 years since we've been here. I think the last time was either October or November 2019. Just wanted to start off reminding you who we are. 8 Minute Solar Energy, founded in 2009. We're a California-based company, but we're spread across the Southwest. The founders in 2009 really started the company with the idea of bringing low-cost power, but renewable power. Pretty much all of the early employees and most of the employees today are really focused on climate change. And so that's really at the heart of what we do. A little hard to see there. Excuse me while I pull up my copy. As I mentioned, we were founded in 2009. Today we have a portfolio that's over 18 gigawatts, so 18,000 megawatts. That's of PV. In addition, we have 24,000 megawatt hours of battery storage that's under development. Now, when I say under development, what I mean is anything from very early stage where we have land and we're doing due diligence, but there's no construction, we haven't started permitting, all the way through projects where we have construction. So that those numbers I just threw out to you, that's the full life cycle of the projects that we're talking about. We do have a number of other projects in Nevada. The two that are most public and that have the most visibility are the two that are on the Moapa Band of Paiutes reservation in Clark County. That's our Eagle Shadow Mountain project and our Southern Bighorn project. And both of those are 300 megawatts each. So both very big projects. The Eagle Shadow Mountain project is under construction and is about 75% complete. And the Southern Bighorn project is expected to go to construction later this year. So we've have a strong presence in Nevada, have been here for quite a while. Dennis worked on some of the very first projects in Nevada with other companies. So we're very happy to be here today and to update you on the Arida project and certainly answer any questions that you have. So this particular project right now is slated to be 370 megawatts of PV. It will also have a storage component. The size of the storage component is still a little up in the air, and I guess to go ahead and directly address one of the questions from the audience member, the project does not yet have a power purchase agreement, so it's not, the energy from it has not been contracted yet. So that's why I can't tell you how big the storage piece is today. And I also can't tell you who the off-taker is or who the ultimate buyer for the power is today. Those discussions are ongoing, but as you might imagine, until that deal is finalized or deals are finalized, it's not something that can be divulged publicly. So unfortunately, I can't answer with certainty the question from the audience today. I think everyone's familiar with the project site. This is the same project site that we talked about when we were here a couple of years ago. It's 4,250 acres. It is the land that we obtained through auction in 2019 from Clark County. I think probably the one thing that I did want to point out that has changed since the last time we were here, if you look on the screen or you look on the handout, you see from the project site, you can see the green line leaving the project site and going back towards the Mojave substation. That's our transmission line. And this is the route that we are currently permitting with the BLM. This transmission line is located almost exclusively on BLM land. It does cross into Bureau of Reclamation land and then does have a very small portion on private land before entering the SCE land at Mojave. I think when we were here a couple of years ago, this route was still very much up in the air. We've done a lot of design work, and this is what it looks like today. In terms of where the project is, I know if you were to drive by the site, you might look out there and say, well, there's no work that's been done. But that is far from the case. We actually are doing quite a bit of work. David is going to talk to you about the permitting, but we are very far along in the permitting, both on the federal side, the state side, and the county side. And in order to get to all that permitting, we've done all the site studies, both in terms of for sensitive resources like biological resources and cultural resources. We've also completed all the studies necessary for the design. So the geotechnical work, we've gone out there, dug holes, done the soil analyses. All of that is to inform the design. We've also done all the hydrology work. So any of the studies necessary for permitting, any of the studies necessary for design, we've done. They're complete. I would say in terms of the engineering and design itself, the actual PV plant, the power plant, that is not as far along as the transmission line. And the reason the transmission line is so far ahead is because of the BLM permitting and needing, that level of engineering to support that particular permitting effort. But otherwise, the footprint is unchanged from what was here when we were here a couple of years ago. I know when you read the description of the action that's before the Clark County Board of Commissioners, it can be a little confusing. It mentions 10,000 acres and slopes of 12 degrees, and really that's more of an artifact of how that's reported and the number of different legal parcels that the project passes through, but the footprint of the project unchanged, 4,250 acres.
But just for clarification, so it's 4,200 is the footprint, but passing through over 10,000 acres, correct? Just to clarify it in the mind for the public.
If you were to measure
10,000 acres of parcels, because it's not using every ounce of every
exactly
parcel.
right.
So that would be because the topography is not possible.
Right. If you look at the actual transmission line, you can see that the acreage that the transmission line takes is very, very small. However, the way that the county needs to report that is by APN.
By APN, which includes the total number of
That's
acreage.
correct.
So I just want our public to understand that. So it's passing through 10,000 acres of parcels. However, the footprint is 4,000, is a little over 4,000.
The footprint of the actual where the panels will be located is 4,225 acres. Do you know off the top of your head how many acres for the Gentai? So additionally, another 150 acres that the Gentai passes through. I think I covered most of this. We don't need to go into detail here. Again, we've done a lot of field studies supporting both the engineering and the permitting. We've included a list of all the permitting that is currently going on with the project here. It's federal permitting for the Gentai as well as and when I say Gentai, I mean transmission line. It's federal permitting because it's on BLM land. There's also state-level permitting as well as county-level permitting for the transmission line. And then for the power plant itself, where the modules will be located, that is both state and county-level permitting. And all of that is captured here, and all of that permitting is expected to be complete by the end of this year. And then the last piece that I wanted to cover before I hand it over to David to talk about the special use permit with Clark County. Obviously, one of the questions we get asked quite a bit is, when will this project come online? When will construction start? And so I've included a very high-level milestone schedule here. And again, because the project does not yet have a purchase power agreement, it's not yet contracted, the actual operation date is not locked in stone, but I've given what I think is a very reasonable estimate of when we expect it to come online, and that would be between October of 2024 and September of 2025, which would mean construction would start in June of 2023, sometime between June of 2023 and May of 2024. And those dates, again, are really driven by two factors. One, once the project has a purchase power agreement, what is the date that we've signed up to? When are we obligated to provide that power? The second piece that's driving this, the interconnection, so how we actually hook up to the grid, is very complicated at Mojave. There's a lot of engineering work, a lot of design work that has to happen. And we have an agreement with SCE, who's the managing, they're the managing entity for Mojave. They're the ones who manage the interconnection process, the design, the permitting, everything that requires us to hook up to the grid. But we have the agreement in place. We're working with their teams to design that. But it takes time. And this is a 500 kV interconnection, which means that's the voltage that the project is at. It's very expensive, very complicated, very time consuming. So that, in addition to the actual contract for the power, is what drives this timeline. I'm happy to answer any general questions now or turn it over to David and let him go through the permitting and then answer questions when that's done, however's best for everyone here.
All right, so if we just want to take some questions of the board and of the public of this section before we move on to the next, or do you think it's wise to go all of it and then just bring them up one by one?
I think it's entirely up to you. I would say if you'd like to do it that way, we can do that as well.
Yeah, I think that some of the questions might get answered in later sections. So if we go through all of their presentation, each three divisions that they're going to present for us, that may negate some people's questions and already answer them so that we don't waste time going back and forth. So if it's okay with you,
Great.
Gentlemen, I'll have you present in rapid succession. And then as our public and the board have questions, we'll bring each one of you back to answer those questions that are your forte or your specialty. Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Perfect.
And you are Dennis Harper, am I correct? You're nope.
Sorry, I'm Dave Lundgren.
Lundgren, okay,
Yes.
and you're the specialty for zoning and permitting, correct?
Permitting, yes. Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present today and for hearing our special use permit request. So this slide just outlines the different use permits that are outlined in the agenda, and then going through pretty much each one with the rationale as to why we were justified to utilize the use permits that are requested.
Could you speak a little louder or maybe a little closer? It's just, it's
Sure.
recorded. I want, if the mic picks you up, then the audience can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I was just saying this slide represents the use permits requested as well as the rationale and justification for those uses, and then just outlines the Clark County Planning and Public Works recommendation so far. So along the left-hand side, we have the 8 different uses. So we have the electric generating station, the substation, overhead transmission line, increasing height of utility structures, the utility structures with all accessory structures, the waiver of landscaping, elimination of trash enclosure, and then allowing signage. And so ultimately, all of these uses are consistent with Title 30. The proposed project is consistent and complies with the master plan that was enacted in November of 2021. And several of the goals and policies outlined in that plan are summarized here, and I'll go through these fairly quickly. One, goal 3.2, expand use of clean energy, and then several policies listed here were related to encouraging renewable energy development, supporting the expansion of locally produced renewable energy, supporting measures for reduction in energy consumption, encouraging emerging technologies that support sustainability goals that are outlined in the master plan, encouraging sustainable growth in alignment with greenhouse gas reduction, and then encourage diversification of the economic base. The proposed project is located in zoning districts with very low density or no residential use at all. and primarily located on rural land. The proposed project is surrounded by rural and vacant lands that are not anticipated for future development at this time. And this is really focusing on the area where our power plant is located, that 4,250 acres. Once in operation, and this is specifically related to the trash, there's going to be a limited number of staff on site full time. And so it's not anticipated having dumpster service, and the trash generation is going to be very minimal. So the assumption is that the staff will remove trash from the facility on a daily or weekly basis. The electric transmission line, as it's proposed, parallels the existing Lugo to Mojave 500 kV line for the majority of the alignment. And so that line is up in the hillside right now, and then comes down where the flood control structure is, crosses Needles Highway into SCE's land. We follow it up until that point, and then we go around the flood control structure across Needles Highway onto BLM land, going across a private parcel, and then coming south across Bruce Woodbury into SCE's property to connect to the Mojave Mojave substation. Let's see. The solar PV facility, substation, overhead power line structures, and operation and maintenance building are located in areas where no services are available or requested. And then finally, this project site was previously approved by the Laughlin Town Advisory Board as well as the County Commission in October of 2011 for a very similar project. And again, the planning and public works staff recommend approval for these special uses. I can pause now if there's any questions, or would you like me to keep?
I think we'll proceed. I've just been making notes. I will have questions, possibly our audience as well. So I've just been making notes that will advise to you, and I think the board's doing the same. And after we have Mr. Harper come forward and state his piece, then we'll bring you back in one by one.
Great, thank you. So the next piece is the waiver of development standards. And these include the off-site improvements, which, as described, are the curb, gutter, sidewalk, streetlights, and paving, as well as the dedication of right-of-way. Again, the proposed project is located in zoning districts with very low density or no residential uses at all and rural land. The proposed project is surrounded by rural vacant lands that are not anticipated for future development. The solar PV facility, substation, overhead power lines, structures, and O&M building are located in areas with no services available or requested. Needles Highway is a fully functioning two-lane highway. The proposed project will not generate high volume of traffic during operation. Again, the full-time staff that would be out there is going to be under 10 employees, and even if they each drive their own vehicle, we're only going to be having a limited number of trips to the site during operations. The proposed project facility does not front directly onto Needles Highway, and this is related to the dedication of right-of-way component. And then again, the access road to the project facility would not be open to the public, so there's no dedication of an arterial or section line street per Chapter 30.52 due to non-operational use by the public. Again, the waiver of development standards is recommended for approval by county planning as well as county public works.
Just get closer to the microphone.
Sure thing. Sorry about that.
They can all hear you that way.
And then the final component here is related to the design reviews. And these include the electric generating station, the solar PV facility, the electrical substation, the overhead power transmission line, the maintenance and operation building, the public utility structures with all accessory ancillary structures and uses, preliminary grading for a hillside development, and then finished grade. Again, the way that the county planning represents The total acreage for the project is all of the parcels that are all the APNs that are touched by the project, not our entire footprint. So we are not putting finishing grade on 10,846 acres. Our project site that will have grading is the 4,250 acre site. And these are the designations: the RU, rural open land; MD, designated manufacturing; M2, industrial; PF, public facility zones. And then the rationale for the design review. Again, the project is consistent with Title 30. The project is consistent and complies with the master plan. The proposed project is located in zoning districts with very low density or no residential uses at all and surrounded by rural land. The project is surrounded by rural and vacant lands that are not anticipated for future development. Once in operation, the project will have trash removed by staff. Dumpster service is not anticipated. The electric transmission line parallels the existing electric transmission lines as described, going through the hillside, coming out towards the corner of Needles and Bruce Woodbury. And the height of the structures is consistent with the adjacent overhead transmission lines. The waiver that was requested for the height of the structure, and this is really only in one location, specifically at where very close to the flood control structure, where the transmission line is coming down from the hillside. We have to get across the existing 500 kV transmission lines. At that location, there are two that are coming in. There's the Lugo to Mojave and the Mojave El Dorado lines. Both of those are 500 kV lines. Their height currently is approximately 150 feet. At this time, we are working with Southern California Edison, the owner of those lines, to determine whether we can go over or under those lines to cross them. If we go over, we will need a structure at that location that is over 200 feet for clearance of those other lines. That's the only location that we are asking for a tall structure. However, the way that the design review and the waiver is written per the county planning and code, it just lists 200 feet for everything. We're not proposing that for the entire alignment. It's just in that one location. Once we cross, however we do it, cross those lines and then cross Needles Highway, the structures are going to be approximately 130 feet tall, which is consistent and potentially slightly lower than the height of the existing transmission lines out there.
That are already in existence. Okay.
Yep. The existing transmission lines are 150 feet, so we're going to be roughly 130 feet. But again, that 200-foot waiver or request is just in that one specific location. As it currently stands, we are thinking we have to design over, but it could end up going under. Let's see. The next piece is related to the 12% slope. So our current grading plan and design for the solar PV facility avoids all slopes greater than 12%. And I'm not sure if it shows up on your sheet, but this is a graphic depiction of where the high slopes are, and those are represented by orange coloring. So we're avoiding grading anything over than 12%. So the preliminary grading for hillside development, the design review, the design as submitted right now avoids all slopes that are that steep. So we're not asking to grade any 12% slopes. We've actually designed our project to avoid
You really
those
don't
mounds.
want to.
Yeah, we don't want to.
Yeah,
The
from a cost efficiency standpoint, it's
Exactly.
very prohibitive, so you really want to stay away from
Exactly.
that. Okay.
And then the last piece regarding the design review component is, again, this project was cited in this very similar area and was previously approved by the Laughlin Town Advisory Board and the BCC in 2011 for the special use permit.
And just for information for our public, and I believe, Fred, you sat on the board with me in 2011. I've been on the board since 2001. So that project, I believe, was the ENN project in 2011. It was the other solar company that was interested in coming in, and we did the approval on that. I'm not sure, Fred, if you were on the board at that time. Okay, all right. So I'm ancient. All right. Moving on.
Yeah. And that covers the portion of the discussion that I was presenting here. And wrap it up. Yeah. Okay. And then just the final slide here is it's just really our partnership approach with the town of Laughlin. I know Jason and Dennis have been coming down and meeting with you all over the past 2+ years. So we really cited our projects on lands that have the highest and best use. These are lands that are primarily degraded, and they have close proximity to existing infrastructure. Our GenTie, the transmission line, specifically follows the existing 500 kV line. We, in our application with the BLM, we are proposing to utilize the existing access roads that are already out there. So we will not be cutting new access roads to construct our transmission line. Our towers are going to be parallel to the existing towers. So any visual components that you see of the towers right now, it's going to be the same. They're just going to be in line. Let's see. We're also ensuring non-interference with current land uses and cultural sites. As Jason mentioned, we've conducted full suite of evaluations on the solar plant site as well as the transmission line. All of that information is currently being reviewed by the BLM. We're anticipating our environmental assessment to be released to the public sometime this quarter. We're just waiting for some comments to come back before we revise that draft for public release. And then really, a key part of our company is just being a great partner for the duration of the project. Again, you've seen Jason and Dennis here presenting to you over the past couple years, and we look forward to working with you in the future as this project progresses through the special use permit process, state permitting, as well as federal permitting, so we can start construction. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and start with questions from the board and then move to the public. As we've gone through this, if you have some questions and clarifications, Pam, Fred?
Yeah, I do have some comments and questions. There is an intent to put a national monument. Are you guys going to interfect with that, or is that no issue?
This project is outside and separate from any of the, I don't know if this has a pointer, any of the proposed national monument boundaries. This project is sited for the PV facility on Clark County lands, which we hold a lease with. And the transmission line follows an existing transmission line, is also outside of that proposed boundary.
Okay. I believe they chose the site and are running the transmission lines because we just had support of the monument. And I think that's why they chose the exact transmission lines, because if you remember, the board asked the new monument to move some of the locations, which they indeed did, and that wouldn't interfere with an additional transmission line in the future. But they chose to go where it's already a known area of critical concern and there's already power lines, so they're just going to buddy up to those to avoid, I think.
We cited our project, and Jason, please chime in for a little history, but we've cited our projects prior to the proposed monument proposal. And really, kind of key to your point, our transmission line was cited due to proximity to existing infrastructure, least environmentally damaging proposed action in order to access that area or outside of critical habitat.
Next question is your access road.
Yes, sir.
Is it going to be dirt or asphalt?
It is going to be crushed gravel. is what the current proposal is.
And is there an issue as far as dust is concerned? I assume with all the off-road vehicles, there shouldn't be.
We don't anticipate any issues with dust control. We'll follow the Clark County standards for mitigating dust control, as well as during construction, any of the stormwater management activities in compliance with stormwater pollution prevention plan.
And air quality management usually has an oversight, making you bring out water trucks and spray the asphalt, or not asphalt, but gravel.
The gravel, yeah.
And that's usually posted right at the front of the permit that says if you have any problems with air quality or dust, call this number. If I remember, it's like a 385 dust number.
Yep, you are correct.
Okay, you said that the minimum crew garbage removal will be taken by employees. Do they take it to their home, or do they have someplace they're going to toss it?
We'll determine that during the operation phase. During construction, the EPC contractor would be responsible for short-term refuse and garbage removal, fairly standard with any larger construction project. During the operation phase, we can set some standards as far as how that trash removal will take place. But I think the key thing is the trash and refuse generated by the minimal number of employees doesn't really justify having a large dumpster out on site, which could be an attractive nuisance for any scavengers and wildlife.
Now, you're also going to have bathroom facilities. Is this going to be a septic system? And where is the water coming from?
That component is still under consideration during the design review. I think right now we are looking at porta potty service for that.
They get really hot in the summer. I'm just like, they're like little rotisseries.
And my last question is,
Sure.
The chart that you showed up here is not in our package. Can we get a copy of that?
You have it, but it's broken down into page, and page. What we're wondering is if you have an overview, because when we try and put those all together, it's really confusing for us.
Yeah, we have what was submitted to the planning department. We've provided a PDF. I also have a copy of very large poster size.
For this office, is that possible to have one made for us?
I can give you the copy I have.
Oh,
here.
okay. Tammy? You'll get that to you? Okay, please get that to Tammy.
Sure thing.
That's all the questions I have.
Okay. Herm, any questions of the applicants? Have you put any together? No?
Just one.
Sure.
Is your company a publicly traded company?
No, we are a privately held company.
Incorporated?
I'm not sure. Yes. Incorporated? Yeah.
Where?
What state? I believe they said they're California-based.
We are a California-based company. Each project has its own separate legal entity.
So a Nevada corporation.
It is registered to do business in Nevada. It is a Delaware entity. It's a Delaware licensed
corporation
entity, but registered to do business in Nevada.
As a DBA with a business license.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
How extensive would a list of ownership be?
It should be public information on the Nevada Secretary of State.
It's a good question. I don't know that I have a great answer for you. She's correct. It would be listed with the business license. As David mentioned, we are privately held. We have a single owner. We do have outside investors, but in terms of the actual project entity, it is itself a legal entity that is owned by the parent company.
Well, I think this is information that we should have because there could arise a conflict of interest, and we ought to know who the parties are that are playing in the game.
When you say conflict of interest, can you maybe expand just a little bit where you think there just potentially or hypothetically could be?
What if one of them, for example, is a landowner in the area where you're operating or where you're contracting.
Okay, I think I understand where you're at. So I think the best way for me to describe that is there were no
No private property holders. It's Bureau of Reclamation, Bureau of Land Management in Clark County. Is that correct? And federal lands. There's no private landowners in this particular mix.
Except one.
Is there one?
Yeah, there is.
Okay,
There's
that's
got to
what-
be. It isn't identified in here, but there's got to be.
there is one,
Somewhere.
and it's us. We actually bought that parcel. 8 Minute Solar Energy bought the private parcel that the transmission line crosses. But in terms of your question of whether we have, are there other, private owners out there in the universe who own parts of this project or parts of our parent company? That's not the case.
And I will add, just because this is how my businesses operate. So I am Nevada LLC Corporations, licensed through Clark County with a DBA, which would be in my case Cinnabon, Seattle's Best Coffee, Red Brick Pizza, Red Mango. So I'm sure you're structured that way. And then further back in the listing, Herm, will be all of the parties that hold a share interest. That interest is identified, and they are what's known as the lists of officers, which must be filed on an annual basis with the Nevada Secretary of State if you maintain a DBA. So that would be something we could look at for online that would show that.
It doesn't give you a disclosure of ownership. The reason I'm asking for a disclosure of ownership is, and referring to a conflict of interest, is if one of the owners of this company has an inordinate
Correct, I
benefit
understand, yeah.
as the result of the business they're transacting, that represents a conflict of interest.
Correct, but each one of these APNs that's identified is available on the Clark County website with the owner's information. If it's Bureau of Reclamation, Bureau of Land Management, Colorado River Commission, Clark County, and if there's a private owner, if it's now, so the search to be done would be under the DBA, which is 8 Minute Energy, and then we have the list of the APNs, and that could be done. I'm not saying it was done with them presenting this before us, and we don't have that answer, but that should all be public information. And I don't, like I said, I've not asked for something like that in the past. It is possible that it's research to be done if that's the concern.
The ownership information was provided as part of a requirement for the application to be submitted to Clark County
Planning Commission?
Planning.
Okay.
So all of that information was supplied with the application to the planning department as part of this special use permit application.
So it's actually been already submitted?
Correct.
Herm, do you have any more questions?
No, I haven't. Thank you.
Kathleen?
I know Fred covered a lot of my questions.
Did he? Okay. All right. Then I have a few questions. So I just want to clarify a few things for our audience so that they're aware, just because with my background with construction and leases. So what I'm understanding from what you have at this point, and I don't know if which one of you would want to answer this, but your contract at this point is 3 years for construction. And then so the audience is aware, you've already negotiated a 20-year term on the project with 2 5-year additional terms. So that is a total of basically 33 years for the project under your ownership or what you're setting up here. So what we're doing here today has implications and impact that can go 33 years. Am I correct?
Well, from today, it would actually be a little bit less. But generally speaking, that's correct. When we went to auction and were the successful bidders, that started the first 3-year clock. So it was an option to lease, whereby we have to exercise that option to ultimately enter the lease. So we're making the option payments right now and have been since November of 2019.
And that money goes into our Fort Mojave Development Fund. Correct. That's correct. Part of one of the publications that we get, I believe, quarterly. Am I right? Quarterly? We're getting that. So you have been making those payments since 2019, already
correct.
into the Fort Mojave Development Fund. Okay.
That's correct. And once we actually exercise the option at the end of the 3-year period, then the 30-year clock starts. And that 30-year clock would include construction and operations.
Okay. One question, because in my leases, my terms extend based upon mutual written notification. Are there caveats on the extension of your lease? In other words, you have one initial 20-year term, then you have 2 5-year terms beyond that.
Correct.
So are those renewable solely at your option and an agreement between the county and you, or what are the terms on that?
I believe they're at our discretion, but Dennis, can you confirm that's the case?
No, that's correct. They are our discretion.
Solely.
Yes.
Okay, solely at your discretion, at your sole and single discretion. Okay, and then one of the questions, in addition, that I have during the construction phase, which is roughly less than 3 years, what is the number of traffic number and body count that it's going to be going out to the facility? Because you are asking for waivers of development standards as far as it goes to queuing and traffic and onto a gravel road. However, that is not difficult to mitigate when you have 10 people going there. It's much more it's much more cumbersome and of an issue with traffic, as construction's going on. And then the next part I will ask, we have our new bridge and the access road coming through, and if you can identify that on the parcel portion, because that will be a traffic consideration. And again, what we do here today is 33 years. However, in the staff recommendations from Public Works, they're saying that they do reserve the right, and I want this on the record, that they can make you do the off-sites and complete it if it becomes a problem in the future. Are you aware of that in the most recent revision from Public Works? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so there you go. It's all yours.
Okay, thank you. No worries. So there are a couple things here. The waiver of standards is for the permanent use, not for construction. So construction is a temporary activity. The construction activity would be resolved through a traffic management plan. And the number of workers currently proposed is approximately 600 workers at the peak time. So that would generate roughly 1,200 vehicle trips per day. The construction period is not a 3-year period. The overall construction is anticipated to take between 12 and 18 months. But again, the waiver that is requested in the SUP is for the permanent use. The construction, the temporary use, is handled separately. We'll also have to be coordinating with NDOT as a result of Needles Highway, and I'm assuming as well that the new bridge also had to take into account the temporary impacts related to construction. Unfortunately, I can't show you on this figure where the road is because it's south and off of the sheet. But if I can go over here.
Yep.
So you have your new bridge.
Just a moment. Doug, can you go to that where he's at or no? I don't know if our cameras will switch because this is recorded and it doesn't make sense to the public that you're pointing to something that they cannot see. But if Doug can't do it, then we'll just go ahead and have you go forward. Okay. I can. I don't think he's able to do it. Okay. Go ahead.
You want me to still
Yep, I do. Yeah, for the board.
Okay. So you have your new bridge coming roughly in this area. There is a very faint line here that is at the end of the development area. This is where the new bridge will exit and come on the highway.
Correct.
Our project site.
Further down. Okay. All right. I just wanted to clarify that.
We're not at the same intersection.
At the large point of ingress and egress for the bridge, so you're south of it.
Correct.
Okay. And then another question. So this is just something to stick in your head about if you're going to be bringing 600 workers to this area. Thank you. However, you have to house them. or I'm not exactly sure what you guys have set up for that, but that's something, because we're already having, housing crisis. I think most of the country is, but definitely Laughlin more so than I think Bullhead, but that's just something, to consider. And then again, I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of and in acceptance of the new revised conditions from Clark County, from staff and the different agencies. And are you in agreement with those as they're written? Have you seen them? Because there is some changes.
Yes, we've reviewed them. I do believe generally we're in agreement. I think we do have some questions for Public Works, specifically related to the point you made about they could change at a later date, the dedication and improvements for offsite.
Okay. And then just one additional question as it pertains to grading, something this board has done. I think we did it back in 2002 or 2003. I was early. So you're going to go in for the grading. Is it going to be a phased grading, sections as you build, or are you requesting that you grade the entire project, the entire 4,500 acres? There is an economy of scale for you, but typically they're going to want special authorization to do that, and typically that comes from the board or comes from the PCC. So typically you're going to be submitting your grading plans in phases as you progress. We did make that adjustment with D.R. Horton many, many years ago, where we allowed them to grade the entire facility, what is now known as Bilberry Ranch, in one fell swoop. Again, economy of scale, but I don't see anything pertaining to that in this.
Our design needs to get further along before we can propose grading plans, and the sequential operation of having the special use permit approved with conditions of further design review required by Public Works and different agencies will then inform what our grading plan is going to be. At this point, I can't say whether we'd be approaching a phased grading approach or doing the full project at once.
And that's something I don't know if this board's dealt with before, because we haven't had a lot of these come before us since this board. We're a relatively new board. Some of us are fixtures, but some of us are new in this. But it is something that this board has done in the past. And it's one of those small things that we can grant developers because it does save them, a lot of economy of scale. If you can grade an entire project, that's a vast financial savings, which ultimately goes down to your bottom line. Right. And it speeds up the project. But it is in keeping with precedent of what this board has allowed for major projects in the past. Okay. So just something as you're going forward with permitting to look at and keep in your little blue bonnet and go from there.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I do have one question.
I knew I'd bring some more.
Very end, when you get to the end, what are you going to do to restore the land?
As part of our project, and I'll let Jason speak to this a little bit more, we do have a decommissioning plan that will be required for a transmission line on BLM land. We'll take the same approach for decommissioning this project site at the end of our lease term as it currently stands. And so that is a standard approach.
If I remember when you came to us, and this was before, again, this board, one of the things we liked about this company, the prior board, is that their footprint is a very small little, disc in the ground. And so it was out of the different footprints that some of the other companies have proposed, it was a smaller, more mitigatable impact. Am I correct? Is that still how you're, putting the stands up in a small, pole section?
Yep. You have to put posts in the ground. There, obviously will be some grading. We will have a project substation currently proposed in the upper northwest corner. But yes, the overall impact to the land is fairly minimal with the posts going into the ground.
And as you submit the project with planning, you also submit the decommissioning, am I correct? That's part of the term? Or is it open-ended and...
I would have to look back to see if a decommissioning plan is required as part of the grading approval. But I don't know.
He left you.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if he had any
You're on your own.
I could hear him walking around.
When you get around to it, I do have a question.
Sure. I thought I would create some more.
It arose as the result of the
okay, so Are you aware, is there a decommissioning plan put in at the same time as the plan goes forward?
There will be a decommissioning plan. The lease actually requires it. I don't.
There we go.
I don't know if it's at the time of lease execution, but the lease requires a decommissioning plan.
Okay, so that's been submitted as well to return it to a good state, the
Right,
land
correct.
as it was. Okay, at the end of the term. Okay, Herm, you had a question?
Well, yeah, you've been talking throughout this presentation of a site of 4,250 acres, correct?
Actually, sorry, he and I both misspoke. The footprint, the lease area is 4,225 acres.
Well, I'm referring to site plans, and there's a statement in this revision that says the proposed development is divided into two components, with the first part, the south portion of the project site, consisting of an electric, so on and so forth. Associated equipment on a portion of 4,250 acres of a 5,077 acre site.
So just for the board's edification, this goes back to the comments we were making related to the 10,000 plus acres of APNs affected. There's some information in here that was prepared by staff that was pulled, I believe, from the prior permit that was approved. Our site is not 5,077 acres. It's 4,225.
Okay.
Is what that shape represents. And that's also the shape that is currently on the screen. Oh, that was on the screen.
Yep. So Tammy, could I ask that you amend that in what staff is saying, just so that it's, if he's saying it's different, what we're giving them is, Herm, would you be agreeable to that? Instead of 4,250 acres on a 5,077 acre site, let's just clean it up and make it as it actually is what they're proposing. Instead of using the verbiage that was in the ENN approval, just clean that. You have no objection to that. Just clear that and clean that up.
4,225 acres is what's listed.
Plus the transmission line as well.
Plus the transmission line,
right.
but our lease is with the county
is specific to that.
4,225 acres.
Okay, Herm, would that be agreeable? We'll just amend it in what staff has. Okay. Any more questions from the board before I open it to the public?
I do have
Fred?
one. You said there will be another temporary permit for the construction. Is the fencing going to be put up around the whole area? And is that going to be done before you start any of the construction?
We will be following the requirements of the Clark County Air Quality Board, which approves the grading plan, which will also have conditions with the installation of any construction fencing and the timing of that construction, or the timing of that fence installation.
I'm good.
Okay, any more questions from the board before I open to the public? Doesn't mean I won't bring it back to the board if we need to clarify something for the public that we see isn't clear. Okay? No more questions from the board. I'll go ahead and open this to the public comment section. Please address the board. However, we will ask the applicants to answer the questions. So if you wouldn't mind, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and give Tammy a spelling of your last name, please. Anyone that would like to ask questions of the applicant. Please go ahead.
My name is Yoko Allen, Allen. I live at 1565 Sparkling Sands Drive in Laughlin. And my question is, I'd like to know where the northern boundary of this project will be, because I live in a middle of nowhere, and I don't have any neighbors. So I'm just wondering where that northern boundary of this project will be.
Mr. Lundgren or Mr. Moritz, did you want to answer that? They're asking for where the northern boundary would be. In other words, where she lives is up by the high school area, and I don't think this proceeds anywhere near that. This is all contained predominantly, according to the APNs, in the Southlands project. But if you'll just clarify that for our resident.
If there's a way we can bring the PowerPoint back up.
The one with the, okay, the map.
Excellent,
Great.
thank you. So our site, as this shape is showing here on the right side of the screen, is the solar PV facility. That is the 4,225 acres. That is what is identified on this map to my left as the Southland area. The transmission line, as described, traverses the kind of mountainous area to the north and east of the PV facility. And then where we cross the flood control structure right at Hyco Springs, cross Needles Highway, we run kind of parallel to Bruce Woodbury on BLM lands.
That's the transmission line. Just so we're clear, this is not the property, it's the transmission line.
Correct. That's the transmission line.
Which is already in existence at those locations.
Yep. And then we cross a private parcel and then come down on BLM land, run parallel to Bruce Woodbury for approximately a quarter mile, and then cross Bruce Woodbury into the Mojave generating station lands to connect to the Mojave substation. Okay.
Is it possible on the map here for our resident here, to identify this map here that we have in front of you, even if we can't follow it on TV, but so the applicant can see, if you'll identify the Laughlin High School and then identify the northern perimeter of your project. I think that's what she's concerned of.
Sure thing. And just for others, the green line that's on the screen right now is what I'm going to be kind of walking through on the side.
Please, Mrs. Allen, if you would pay attention, what he's going to show you right now, he's going to identify the high school for you, and then he's going to identify that's the high school, and then he's going to identify the northern boundary so that you're clear. Good job, Doug. Okay, does that answer your question, Mrs. Allen? Yes, great, I wanted to do that for you. Okay, and are there any other questions from the public of the applicants pertaining to this project? If so, please state your name and record, state your name and record, good Lord. State your name and address for the record. Journey back into law enforcement. Okay.
Hi, my name is Daniel Vanderloop, 2302 Crook Lake Court in Laughlin. I'm here representing the Laughlin Economic Development Corporation and as a private citizen. The Laughlin Economic Development Corporation mission is to create and implement a collaborative venture among civic and business leaders in the town of Laughlin to promote the health, welfare, and quality of life for the residents of Laughlin through economic development. In the light, we ask the Laughlin Town Advisory Board to support the special use permit application made by 8 Minute Energy today. This applies to the 42 25-acre Southland lease and the transmission corridor to get to the Mojave Switch Station. LEDC has been a long-standing proponent of the solar generation site in the Southland and the economic diversity it brings to the Laughlin Township. One of Laughlin's future opportunities of economic development is clean, green, solar-generated electric power and transmission in the western section of Laughlin Township. This project is the start of what we hope are many more projects that would extend west into the US 95 corridor. The state of Nevada has committed to the generation and use of renewable energy when it passed the renewable portfolio standard. At least 50% of the electricity used in Nevada by 2030 must come from renewable sources. This project is the first in the Laughlin Township, with, we hope, more to come to utilize the existing Mojave Switch Station and transmission lines that will be needed to meet the clean energy needs of Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more comments from the public? Any more questions of the public of the applicants? Ms. Allen, please come up to the podium again.
Just one question. When this project is being built, are there any provisions to hire people locally? I mean, is there any kind of stipulation that the company has to adhere to?
Okay, we'll ask that of the applicants. I believe there is for some residents. I'm not sure.
So in general, we very much do try to use local labor as much as possible. We like to be partners in the community, and certainly one of the benefits of having a solar project like this is providing both economic opportunities and employment benefits as well. So very likely that this project would use labor workforce for at least part of it. The project, we do hire a construction contractor. We are not a construction company. We do not build the project ourselves, but we do hire a construction contractor. They would be responsible for the labor force, and I can promise you, if they can get labor locally, they will. It's really these days more about finding enough people. And certainly we would make an effort when we are hiring the contractor and impress upon them the importance of using the local workforce.
So this would be an RFB, and using local workforce would be advantageous, but with the number needed of being 600, that's probably not available within our community.
Probably not.
From either side, drawing all the way to Kingman for the skill set that you need. Okay. All right. Any more questions from the public? Okay. I'm going to call, I'm sorry, please. Come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name's Jackie Wallen, President and CEO of the Laughlin Chamber of Commerce and also representing the Laughlin Tourism Commission. The special site that you talk about that goes up where flood control is, if you have to go above those lines from 150 feet up towards 250 feet, will they be seen by the ordinary public eye? That was my first question.
The visual representation of those towers would not be any different than the towers that are currently in existence.
So there's enough clearance. Enough clearance for 250. What if you have to go below?
Our preference would be to go below for a construction and cost standpoint, but that's currently, it's a engineering discussion with Southern California Edison.
Probably my most important one is for Laughlin Tourism Commission, and that is how is this going to affect the race course that occurs at the west. So it would actually be the northeast corner of Bruce Woodbury and Needles Highway. It's a 17-mile course. It starts at Edison. I don't know if I can find it. I was hoping we'd have a bigger map so we could see all that's included.
So at Bruce Woodbury and Cal Edison? I don't think we're
No, we
anywhere near
start
that.
there for the race,
Oh,
but it goes
start there.
out 17 miles across Needles Highway into the desert, and they're talking about bringing the transmission lines through there and then coming down farther to go over to the Cal Edison property or Mojave transmission. So I'm worried about construction or the transmission lines themselves not following a transmission line that already exists across Bruce Woodbury because it affects the course itself. And I haven't been able to identify that on the map.
Yeah, I think from a cost perspective standpoint, I don't think they're venturing at all away from the current transmissions line. I think it's financially prohibitive if they were to put in their own, but I'll let them answer. But I'm pretty sure they're going to follow what already exists as far as current transmission lines. There's just a height deviation at flood control. And then I think just as the normal process, the BOR, BLM will mitigate the race course because that's their lands once it's built. I don't think, if it's going across those APNs, it'll have to be drawn out. I think that's the normal course of things. But I think they'll still allow the events to go on, definitely. And I think that they'll mitigate with that. However, under staff conditions, it's not something, if we can get the applicant to agree to that, to working with events to pull it out away, but still transverse.
My intent is just to clarify whether or not it's going to go through the course. They're going to do what they need to do to build this and build transmission lines. I agree. But I need to know in advance how this is going to affect my promoters, number one. And he did use the word that it's going to deviate in some parts from the existing transmission line.
I believe that's only in height, though.
And I just need to know where that is.
All right, then this board can also, if we get agreement from the applicant, that as we have special events which have gone in this community for 40 years, that you would work with, Clark County and special events to, pull it away from, maybe right now, today, it's completely through the middle of your plant. But that you would work with special events for future races. Would that?
Yeah, it's the same course. Everyone uses the same course.
It may not be able to be the same course, Jackie,
I understand.
going forward.
I just need to be able to, in advance, tell my board whether it's going to have a future effect on the race course as it exists.
It probably will as it exists, but by the same token, we can ask of the applicant that they work with special events and promotions so that can continue, because that's been, it's an economic factor in our community for 30 years.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was the new bridge, as you brought up, where the T is, where that road meets Needles Highway. We're agreeing at this point. Their request is to agree with off-site improvements. If that corridor right there becomes very popular and we see a lot of traffic in and out of our resort area, not having off-site improvements could make a difference in the visual first impression of someone who's visiting new. And the other thing that will affect resorts would be accommodations for 600 workers. We could give group rates to construction for that area, but we'd be selling them at a cheaper rate than we would sell at a visitor's rate, and I don't know how that's going to go over with the resorts without planned housing.
Right.
Those are just statements I needed to make today.
That's true. And one thing I'll add, Jackie, I did ask of the applicant, because there is a provision in staff recommendations. There was a change. There's a provision within staff recommendations that's specifically saying Public Works is reserving the right to say, we're not going to require you to do the offsites, but this lease, that's why I drew out the 33 years that are going forward. If we deem that they need to be done, we're going to bring you back in and we're going to make you do the offsites. And so he said that he was acceptable to that condition because that's in writing from the staff report. And I felt that was important too, because we're looking at what we do here today is impacting 33 years.
Yes.
So, okay. So then,
thank you.
Just out of public comment, I'm going to ask the applicant if they would consider working with public events and race course that has gone on for 30 years in the package going forward. Mr. Lundgren.
All right. Thank you for those comments. Let me kind of start with the race course. The transmission line, as it's currently cited, avoids the race course. We overlaid the Laughlin race environmental assessment documentation that BLM and Reclamation had, and our project transmission line avoids it. Where we come down at that corner that is on the edge of BLM land, right before you get to the water reclamation district property, we come down on an existing access road. Understand that might be used for races, but our siting will be at the direction of both BLM and Reclamation. So right now, through discussions that we've had and how we've cited the project, we don't see any impact. As far as during construction and how that may affect races that are going on, the BLM and Reclamation, they close access to rights-of-way holders during those events. So there would not be an ability, there would not be any conflict with construction equipment or construction vehicles or anything like that at a scheduled time that you'd have a race. The BLM already does that right now, so we'd be following that same process that the right-of-way holders have to do. Let's see, the comment about the offsites. So, why we're requesting that waiver is this is not going to be a public road to access the project facility. We're going to have a gate on there. And so having a gravel road is more accustomed to a construction site in a solar operating facility, where we don't feel like we should be subject to the offsites by putting in street lighting, curbs and gutters, paving, is because no one's using that road except for us. So there will be a gate that will be placed at a certain distance coming off of Needles Highway, and that is also described in the special use application as well. And it's in the preliminary design plans. So hopefully that answers everyone's questions.
Okay. Any more questions from the public? Public comment, statements in support or denial? Okay. I'm going to call a short recess. I need to have a sidebar with staff. So if I can have everyone back, if you need to use the restroom, let's have you back here at 3:20. So I'm going to call for a 15-minute recess. We'll adjourn and reconvene at 3:20. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will go ahead and reconvene this meeting after our recess. There was a little bit of clarification of a few things going forward. And one of the subjects that was discussed was, before we went on break, was the ability of the applicant to work with, through the process, our events facilities and races going forward. And so that is something that this board can add to conditions. It is part of the normal process, but it is something that we can add to our approval or denial of, this is many things. This is, a use permit, waiver of development standards, and design review. So this is in three parts. This is a large agenda item, actually, for today. So is there any more questions from the board or any more? Okay, so we'll close it to the board for additional questions. And if there's any questions of the applicant or comments by the public, please take the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Renee Yepez. My address is 3513 Cottage Meadow Way, Laughlin, Nevada, 89029, obviously. I'm not very familiar with all of the solar activities and how they're used later and processed later, but I was just wondering in hearing that there are no contracts for use at this time, that this is just about the projects themselves. Is there anything stated in the contract, should it come to pass, that Clark County, on behalf of Laughlin, can have use of this solar energy that's being produced, that we would be offered that at a lower rate than perhaps somebody else because it's in our town or in our town, and therefore there'd be something in the contract that we could use it at a lower rate? I was just curious.
Okay.
Or maybe in the future to maybe think about that. I'm not sure.
Okay. Of the applicants, is there any contractual?
So generally, these types of projects are utility projects. There are community solar projects that are put together specifically for the community to use that energy. That is not directly what this project is designed for. This project has an interconnection at the Mojave substation. The Mojave, as many of you know, is co-owned by a number of different utilities. There's Nevada Energy, SCE, LADWP. Is that it? Am I missing one?
Yes, but I can't recall it. There's one more owner too. I'm sorry, I don't recall it.
So for this project specifically, it would likely be one of those entities that the power is contracted for. If, for example, the town of Laughlin wanted a community solar project, the town of Laughlin would, put together like a request for proposal. Developers would come in, present bids, and that would be a way that the town could benefit directly from a project in terms of, potentially lower rates. A lot of that is subject to utility rules in whatever state we're talking about. I'm going to be honest, I don't know, because we don't do community solar. I don't know what the relationship is between the Public Utilities Commission and the rules governing community energy here in Nevada. But I guess the short answer to your question is really the way that Laughlin benefits from this project directly is through the
rental. You're making, and if I'm correct, from the Fort Mojave Development Fund, they've already been making payments on the land while they do their studies since 2019, and it's several $100,000 into the Fort Mojave Development Fund. If I'm not mistaken, I don't remember the numbers. It was 2011. I'm working hard here, so.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know the exact.
I don't know the numbers, but it's substantial that they're making payments and have been since 2019, which allows them the right to do their studies and to do everything and put together the proposal that they're bringing us today. And the reason I don't think you've sold your power is because no one's going to necessarily purchase the power if you don't have all of the designs and, you don't have it shovel ready. If it's not a shovel ready project, you're not going to get a contract because there's too many things that can pop up. But then in addition, on an ongoing aspect, you have the 10 permanent jobs, 600 construction jobs, the tax revenue, and then there is a tax, I believe, that goes for the power that you sell. You're sending it to the switch, and then from the switch, you're going to be sending it wherever, but there is a tax revenue that generates from there with the PUC. Am I not mistaken?
I'm not exactly sure how the power itself is taxed, but you are correct on sales tax on the yearly revenue, and that revenue that we pay in leases and like she said earlier, it's 33 years. And it is a substantial sum.
I think it's like hundreds of thousands, like a month, or not a month or a quarter.
It's almost $1 million a year.
Yeah, about $1 million a year. And so that's going in and has been since 2019 into the Fort Mojave Development Fund, which is funds that this community can use for growth and development of our infrastructure and everything. So that has been going on since 2019. If they hadn't been making those payments, the county and federal government and state would not allow them to do their studies and occupy the land.
That's correct.
Is that pretty accurate. Okay, to answer for our resident. Okay. All right. So, just because this has been a long, drawn-out process, and I'm going to try and encapsulate it. So I could call for a question or call for a motion. However, I'm going to try and just take everything we've had together, add the small portion for events, and make a motion. So I will make a motion that we approve UC 210753, County of Clark Administrative, for a use permit for the following: electric generating station, solar photovoltaic facility, electric substation, overhead power transmission line, increase the height of utility structures, public utility structures within all accessory structures, waive landscaping and screening requirements, eliminate trash enclosure, and allow signage in conjunction with the electric generating station and electric substation. Also, approval of waiver of development standards for the following: 1, off-site improvements, curb, gutter, sidewalk, streetlights, and paving, and 2, dedication of right-of-way. Approval also of design reviews for the following: electric generating station, solar photovoltaic facility, electrical substation, overhead power transmission line, maintenance and operations building, public utility structures with all accessory ancillary structures and uses, preliminary grading for a hillside development of slopes greater than 12%, and finished grade on 10,846 acres in an RU, otherwise known as Rural Open Land Zone, and MD, Designed Manufacturing Zone, and M2, Industrial Zone, and a PF, Public Facility Zone, generally located on the west side of Casino Drive and Needles Highway, 1.3 miles west of Casino Drive within Laughlin. In addition, the applicant has agreed to staff recommendations as written in the revised, and the applicant has stated that he will coordinate with events as it might affect or impact long-standing events within the Laughlin community. That is my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The count is 5-0. Your motion carries, gentlemen. You have our approval. Okay. Now, where's my agenda? I lost it so long ago. Where did it go? Okay. We'll move forward now to item number 6, which is general business. We don't have any posted for this. We'll move forward one more time to item number 7, which is comments by the general public, a period devoted to comments by the general public about matters relevant to our board's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. No vote or discourse, questions, or conversation can take place on a matter that is not listed on a posted agenda. It is a time for you to make comments about things that are a public concern. These comments are limited to 3 minutes. Please step up to our speaker's podium, state your name and address, and spell your name for Tammy in the record. If any member of the board wishes to extend the length of the presentation, this will be done by the chair or the board by a majority vote. So if we'll go ahead and open this up. This is public comment for items that pertain to this board's jurisdiction, but are not posted on today's agenda. Just so you're aware, we cannot entertain discussion, questions, or actions on those items. Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Bruce Henry, 2004 Mesquite Lane, number 201 in Laughlin. And that address will be valid until Friday. Because I'm relocating. If you don't mind, I need to take my glasses off. I prayed before I came here for public comments. 2 weeks ago, I submitted a letter to be read, and it was not read. And it made me stop to think whether or not our board here had started to infringe on our First Amendment to public speak. Not everyone can be in this audience at the same time. And I was really concerned about it. I don't know what, I know there's been a policy with an option to read something or not to read something. And I don't know the why and when that took place, but I think that needs to be reconsidered by the particular board. I know in the past I have disagreed with members of the current board, but it's never been personal. It's always been based on policy. And I have these, I wanted to say also the fact that to stifle or for the appearance to stifle anyone's First Amendment right, I believe is disappointing and disheartening. I do know that there's an axiom, I don't know if any of you have ever studied history, there's an axiom known as the tyranny of the majority. And I hope that's not what I'm seeing here, where the minority has a chance to voice, whether through being here or through written statements. I hope that's not the case. But really, in that letter, I really wanted to emphasize the fact that river safety is going to continue, even though I'm not involved with that website anymore. And I appreciate that update you gave. I had no idea that that was happening. And the only last thing I would like to say, and this applies to myself too, and it could apply to anyone in this room. My mom, who passed away 23 years ago, one of the last things she ever said to me, sometimes we get too big for our britches. Thank you.
And Bruce, I'll go ahead and address that, even though it's unusual that we do this at this section. So last meeting, it was, Tammy did print off your letter. Mark gave it to me. I actually had conversation with Kathleen about it, put it up here. I was going to read it as a normal part, as we frequently do. Just the meeting went long. I ended up with other paperwork on it, and I forgot it. It was not a personal slight. It just, by the time the meeting, I don't know what time our meeting got out, like 4. It was quite a lengthy one. I did not get it read. So I do apologize for that. There was, I certainly would have, and I've done that in the past, and especially, being aware that you were leaving, but I did forget it. And like I said, the meeting went long. It was already a discussion I'd had with Kathleen, with Mark, to go ahead and read it. So I just want to put that out there. Okay. Any more public comment on items not on today's agenda, but within the purview of the board? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and advise of our next meeting date, which would be our normal meeting date, and that's February 8th in this building at 1:30 of 2022. And with that, I'll go ahead and call for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your day.